Vanished. The Gulf's ghost signal, the true story of Maya Ramirez. The Gulf of Mexico guards its secrets with a relentless, hungry silence. But sometimes, a whisper breaks through. A signal, sent from beyond the void, carrying a final, desperate scream, and the chilling truth of a disappearance that defied explanation. The fading echo. The sun, a fiery orb sinking into the vast, indifferent expanse of the Gulf, painted the sky in shades of bruised purple and angry orange. Below it, clinging to the skeletal remains of a forgotten oil rig, Maya Ramirez felt a thrill that vibrated deep in her bones. This was it, the pinnacle of urban exploration, live-streamed to thousands, each click of her camera a pulse-beat of shared adventure. Her drone, a silent sentinel, hummed overhead, capturing every creak of corroded metal, every sigh of the wind through abandoned gantries. Her last spoken words, captured by the drone's crisp audio, were a breathless whisper to her online audience. The ghosts of Galveston's deep. We're going even deeper tonight. She'd been meticulously planning this exploration for months, charting paths through forgotten channels, studying currents, predicting the whims of the notorious Texas Gulf. But as twilight bled into true darkness, an unsettling shift occurred. The familiar hum of the rig seemed to deepen, morphing into something more resonant, a low thrum that vibrated through her boots. The air, usually thick with salt and oil, took on an odd, metallic tang. Her phone, clamped to her chest harness, flickered with a sudden, inexplicable static, momentarily garbling the live feed. "Just interference," she muttered to her distant viewers, forcing a confident smile. But a prickle of unease traced its way up her spine. Then, a sound, a scraping rhythmic drag from below, somewhere in the cavernous depths of the rig's submerged base. It was too regular, too deliberate to be the groaning of old metal or the lap of waves. Maya swung her camera down, her powerful headlamp cutting through the gloom, searching. The last image her thousands of viewers would ever see was a fleeting, indistinct shape against the dark water, moving with an unnatural speed. And then a sudden, violent lurch. The drone's feed erupted in a cacophony of white noise, a digital shriek that tore through the speakers of countless eager fans. Maya's own voice, caught in the chaos, became a single, raw, terrified scream, abruptly cut short. Silence. The signal flatlined. The Gulf had swallowed her whole, leaving only a chilling echo in its wake. For a year, the sea held its tongue. The Coast Guard searched, then declared it a tragic accident. Elena Ramirez, Maya's older sister, a cybersecurity savant who could untangle the most complex digital webs, refused to accept it. Maya wasn't reckless. She was meticulous. A year of agonizing, sleepless nights passed, marked only by the hollow ache of unanswered questions. Then, a miracle of the mundane. A local shrimper, Earl Barnacle Jones, pulled his nets from the murky depths. Tangled amidst the flapping fish and crustaceans was an anomaly, a battered, encrusted drone. Maya's drone. Impossibly, miraculously, a faint, corrupted data signal still pulsed from its waterlogged core, like a dying heart unwilling to surrender. Elena got the call. Her pulse, long dormant with grief, began to pound with a frantic, desperate hope. The drone, battered and scarred, was a witness. And it held a secret that the Gulf had tried, but failed, to bury. A stranger's hand. The Coast Guard briefing room was sterile, cold, a stark contrast to the churning chaos in Elena's mind. Petty Officer Lewis, barely out of uniform academy, nervously explained the discovery, presenting the recovered drone like a relic. But it was Lieutenant Commander Ben Carter, a man whose eyes held the weary wisdom of years battling the relentless Gulf, who truly seized Elena's attention. He watched her, a silent observer, as she painstakingly extracted the corrupted fragments from the drone's memory. The haunting clip, showing Maya's final, terrified moments, was proof enough for Elena. This was no accident. "If you want to find answers out there, Miss Ramirez," Carter rumbled, his voice low enough that Lewis wouldn't hear, "you don't ask the brass. You ask a man who knows the water better than the water knows itself. A man who moves in the shadows where our regulations don't reach." His gaze held hers, a silent, knowing plea. The next day, Carter led her to a cluttered, weather-beaten office overlooking the shimmering expanse of the Galveston Bay. Jedediah Stone, he introduced, gesturing to a figure who seemed carved from the Gulf itself. Jed, a man whose face was a roadmap of sun-baked wrinkles, offered a handshake that was surprisingly firm, almost bone-crushing. His eyes, the color of sea glass, seemed to pierce through Elena, assessing, analyzing. Jed listened to Elena's frantic recounting of the drone footage, his expression impassive, betraying nothing. "The Gulf has a way of swallowing things up," he finally said, his voice a gravelly monotone, devoid of inflection. "Currents are tricky. They'll take a body and a drone in two different directions. It happens." His words were dismissive, almost too casual, yet they carried an unsettling undercurrent of authority. He knew this realm, Elena realized, with an intimacy that felt almost predatory. "I know those rigs like the back of my hand," he continued, a thin, unnerving smirk playing on his lips. "I can take you to where the signal was, and show you why you'll never find your sister there." The way he uttered the last phrase, with a chilling, quiet finality, sent a jolt of alarm through Elena. He was offering help, yes, but his words felt less like a promise and more like a carefully veiled warning, a silent challenge that stirred the deepest recesses of her growing apprehension. She had found a guide, but was he leading her to the truth, or deeper into the labyrinth? The labyrinth of lies. The salt spray whipped Elena's face as the deep prowler cut a powerful swathe through the choppy Gulf waters. The boat was Jed Stone's pride, an imposing vessel that seemed more warship than salvage craft. As Elena moved about the deck, her sharp, analytical mind registered every anomaly. The loose deck plates, rattling faintly beneath her boots, weren't just signs of wear. They were cleverly disguised access points, hinting at hidden compartments below. There were too many hatches, strategically placed, and the twin fuel tanks were monstrous, designed for weeks of untraceable activity far from shore. This wasn't a working boat. This was a sophisticated instrument of secrecy. Jed, seemingly oblivious to her scrutiny, piloted the vessel with unnerving precision. He spoke of currents, tides, and the treacherous beauty of the forgotten rigs, his voice calm, almost hypnotic. Then, as they neared the coordinates Maya's drone had transmitted, he stopped the boat. "This rig," he announced, gesturing to a distant, rusted silhouette that seemed to bleed into the horizon, "is part of a new, highly restricted military demolition zone. Classified. No one gets in or out without top-level clearance." His explanation was perfectly rehearsed, too smooth. Elena's gut clenched. She knew this area. There had been no public announcement of such a zone. It was a lie, a carefully constructed barrier. They would search the perimeter, Jed explained, feigning diligence, pretending to look for something he knew wasn't there. Later, at a dilapidated, isolated fuel dock shrouded in mist, the charade deepened. Elena watched with growing unease as Jed and a silent, muscular deckhand loaded crate after crate onto the deep prowler. They weren't standard supplies. These were specialized tracking devices, normally used for high-value cargo, designed to be inconspicuous and long-lasting. As Jed disappeared below deck, Elena noticed a lone, wizened dockhand watching her. He shuffled closer, his eyes darting. "Don't bother looking for him on a manifest, little lady," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. Jed's operations are never questioned. Not by the Coast Guard, not by anyone. The words hung heavy in the humid air, a chilling confirmation of Elena's worst fears. Jed wasn't just connected, he was protected. And Maya wasn't just missing, she was part of something far bigger, a sinister network woven into the very fabric of the Gulf's underbelly. Elena felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. She was adrift in a sea of lies, and the current was pulling her into the deep. The ghost in the machine. The betrayal hit Elena like a physical blow, a cold dread far more potent than the Gulf wind. Jed Stone's lies were no longer mere inconsistencies. They were active deceptions designed to bury the truth. But Elena had a weapon Jed hadn't accounted for, her raw, unparalleled skill as a cybersecurity expert. She bypassed his fabricated, restricted military zone with a grim resolve. Working tirelessly, she pieced together the drone's corrupted GPS logs, meticulously reconstructing Maya's true, unedited last path, a ghost trail that led directly to a forgotten rig, deep within the very area Jed had declared off-limits. Under the cover of pre-dawn darkness, Elena piloted a small, rented fishing skiff towards the coordinates. The silence of the open water was broken only by the hum of her small engine and the frantic pounding of her own heart. As the skeletal silhouette of the rig loomed into view, Elena's breath hitched. It was not abandoned. Not empty. Lights flickered in its lower levels, and figures moved with purpose. This was no ghost rig, it was a clandestine hub. She cut her engine, drifting silently, and used high-powered binoculars. What she saw chilled her to the bone. Jed Stone, unmistakable even from a distance, stood on a lower platform. Beside him was Lieutenant Commander Ben Carter, his crisp Coast Guard uniform a grotesque mockery of authority. And a third man, sharply dressed, authoritative, Elena recognized him from local news reports. Captain Ramirez, head of the regional maritime security. They weren't just observing. They were orchestrating. Below them, a battered fishing trawler was tethered to a sleek, unmarked Coast Guard vessel. People, not cargo, were being moved under the cloak of night. Elena's hands trembled as she activated her phone's recorder, zooming in with a telephoto lens. Their voices, low and menacing, carried across the water, amplified by the dead calm of the pre-dawn air. Migrant shipments, through the Galveston pipeline, Jed's voice rasped. Captain Ramirez replied, and the other asset from last year? The one who stumbled onto the last transfer. Jed gave a chilling, guttural laugh. She's secure. Her sister won't find a thing. She thinks it's a military zone. A cold shiver ran through Elena. Maya. They had kept her. And these men, these supposed pillars of the community, were orchestrating a horrific human trafficking ring. As a rogue wave jostled her skiff, nearly exposing her, Elena narrowly avoided detection. She gunned her engine, racing away, the horrifying truth burning in her mind. She knew who to call. Marcus Thorne, her old friend from college, now an FBI agent. This was no longer just about finding Maya, it was about exposing a conspiracy that reached into the highest echelons of authority. The whispered warning. The recording on her phone was a ticking time bomb, the chilling voices of Jed Stone, Ben Carter, and Captain Ramirez now undeniable proof of their monstrous conspiracy. Elena locked herself away, fueled by caffeine and a desperate urgency, meticulously cross-referencing their cryptic references to a processing hub and the facility, with satellite imagery of abandoned industrial structures along the Texas coast. Hour after hour, she scoured maps, cross-referenced forgotten blueprints, until one location screamed out, a disused, heavily fortified fish cannery, tucked away off a remote stretch of highway, its faded paint and broken windows hiding a sinister purpose. This was it. She arrived before dawn, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The air around the cannery hung heavy with the stench of decay and something else, a faint, metallic odor that turned her stomach. She watched, hidden in the dense, thorny scrub, as figures moved inside, the flicker of distant lights confirming her terrifying suspicion. This wasn't just abandoned, it was active. This was where the shipments disappeared. And somewhere inside, Maya was held prisoner. Her phone buzzed, vibrating against her clammy palm. An unknown number. Hesitantly, she answered. A voice, barely a whisper, strained and hoarse, crackled through the receiver. Elena, it's me, Maya. I'm at the cannery. He's coming back. The line went dead. Maya was alive. The words were a fragile, precious gift, but they also brought a fresh wave of terror. Elena immediately called Marcus Thorne, her FBI friend, pouring out the details in a frantic, breathless torrent. Marcus, his voice grim, promised a full tactical team would be mobilized by morning. Stay put, Elena, he urged. Don't go in alone. But the universe had other plans. Moments later, her phone rang again. This time, it was Lieutenant Commander Carter. His voice, usually gruff, was now laced with an icy calm that chilled her to the bone. Elena, he said, I know you've been digging. I know what you've seen. You've gotten too close. He then delivered a chilling invitation, Jed and I are heading back to the rig where your sister disappeared. We'd like you to join us. A private tour of the restricted zone. Come alone, or we can't guarantee anything." The message was clear. They knew. They wanted her. And they had Maya. The timeline had just collapsed. Dawn was too late. Elena had a choice: wait for help and risk Maya's life, or face the monsters alone. Her sister's whispered plea echoed in her mind. There was no choice. The hunter becomes the hunted. The text message arrived like a punch to the gut. A photo of Maya, bruised and bloodied, her eyes wide with terror. Beneath it, a stark, chilling command: last chance. Come alone. Now. The image was a twisted invitation, a forced hand that erased all doubt, all fear for Elena's own safety. Marcus's tactical team was hours away. Maya was counting on her. There was no other choice. She slammed her vehicle into gear, the tires spitting gravel as she sped toward the abandoned cannery. The air inside the dilapidated facility hung heavy with the putrid scent of decay, a metallic tang of fear. Elena moved through the shadows, her breath catching in her throat as she discovered it. A series of makeshift, squalid holding cells, clearly designed for human cargo. The horrifying reality of the human trafficking operation hit her with brutal force. A faint, desperate whimper led her to a large, soundproofed cold storage unit. There, huddled in the frigid darkness, was Maya, emaciated, injured, but undeniably alive. Elena reached for her sister, a choked sob escaping her lips. But before their reunion could truly begin, the heavy steel door of the cooler slammed shut with a sickening thud. The sudden click of the lock echoed in the oppressive silence. From the gloom of the cannery's main floor, 3 figures emerged: Jed Stone, his eyes burning with a cold, predatory fire; Lieutenant Commander Ben Carter, his face grim, his uniform a shocking emblem of corruption; and Captain Ramirez, a man who once symbolized authority, now utterly devoid of honor. Well, Jed sneered, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. The clever sister comes to join the party. He paced slowly, like a shark circling its prey. Your little sister here, he said, gesturing to Maya, stumbled onto a transfer. Filmed it no less. She was resourceful. I decided to keep her. The words hung in the air, dripping with a chilling, possessive malice that sent shivers down Elena's spine. But now, Jed continued, his voice hardening, you're both liabilities. A quick, boating accident, in the deep Gulf. No bodies, no evidence. Perfect. He laughed, a guttural, mirthless sound. Elena's heart plummeted. They were going to kill them. A sudden, sharp glint caught Jed's eye. His gaze dropped to Elena's chest harness. Her small, hidden body camera, still streaming live, was exposed. His face twisted with raw, unbridled fury. The camera, he roared, lunging forward. The plan had shifted. There was no time for subtlety. The criminals, their masks ripped away, dragged Elena and Maya out of the cannery, forcing them onto Jed's powerful, offshore speedboat, the Deep Prowler. Their final voyage into the abyss was about to begin. The storm breaks. The roar of the Deep Prowler's engines was a deafening prelude to their demise, as Jed Stone gunned the vessel towards the boundless, dark horizon. Elena clung to Maya, whispering desperate reassurances, her eyes scanning the black water for any sign of hope. Jed and his accomplices, Ben Carter and Captain Ramirez, moved with a brutal efficiency, preparing to send the sisters to their watery graves. Say goodbye to your precious Gulf, Maya, Jed snarled as he roughly secured a heavy anchor to a rope, ready to tie it to her ankle. Just as despair threatened to consume them, a new sound ripped through the night, a thunderous, rhythmic chop that vibrated through the very air. High above, a federal helicopter, its powerful searchlight slicing through the darkness, materialized like an avenging angel. Below it, 2 sleek, high-speed interceptor boats, led by Marcus Thorne, converged on the Deep Prowler, their bows cutting white foam. The night erupted. Bullets stitched the air as Captain Ramirez, his face contorted in a snarl of desperation, opened fire on the approaching helicopter. Grant, seizing a brief, chaotic moment, tackled Navarro, sending him sprawling on the deck. Amidst the chaos, Jed, enraged and cornered, seized Maya, pushing her towards the stern, the heavy anchor already tied to her leg. "You won't escape me," he screamed, his eyes wild. But then a figure dropped from the sky. Marcus, a blur of motion, fast roped onto the deck, his weapon already raised. A single, precise shot found Jed's leg. He roared, staggering back, releasing Maya just as she teetered on the edge. Another FBI agent, having fast roped from the second interceptor, dove into the churning water, pulling Maya to safety from the brink of the abyss. Navarro, disoriented from the struggle with Grant, was neutralized by a sniper's shot from the helicopter, crumpling to the deck. Ben Carter, his face pale with shock, dropped his weapon and surrendered, his reign of corruption ending in a hail of gunfire and the flashing blue lights of justice. Grant, bruised but unbroken, pulled Maya into a fierce embrace as Marcus secured Jed's stone. The nightmare was finally over. Marcus, his face grim but relieved, confirmed over the comms that the tactical teams had simultaneously raided the cannery. The refugees, the other victims of Jed's horrifying trade, were safe. Echoes and horizons. The Galveston night, once a canvas for terror, now bore witness to the grim aftermath. Maya was rushed to the nearest hospital, her frail body ravaged by severe malnutrition and the trauma of prolonged captivity. The doctors worked tirelessly, but the physical scars were only a fraction of the ordeal she had endured. In an interrogation room that reeked of stale coffee and desperation, Jed Stone, his empire of depravity shattered, finally broke. His confession spilled out, a chilling testament to his multi-year human trafficking ring, detailing how he'd leveraged his deep, corrupt connections within the Coast Guard. He revealed the horrifying truth. Maya had inadvertently stumbled upon a secret offshore transfer, filming it, and in a twisted act of possessive cruelty, he had decided to keep her. He admitted to the repeated assaults, the torment he inflicted, believing she was just another ghost the Gulf would swallow. But even in her darkest hours, Maya had found a flicker of defiance. Jed revealed, with grudging astonishment, that Maya, with incredible presence of mind, had managed to hide her drone for days after her capture. She'd then launched it from a hidden vent in her makeshift prison, hoping it would drift to shore, a silent, corrupted message in a bottle. Her desperate act, against all odds, had been the key. Weeks bled into months. Captain Ramirez and Lieutenant Commander Ben Carter faced the full, unyielding force of federal justice, their once unblemished careers ending in convictions that promised life behind bars. Maya's recovery was a slow, agonizing climb. Nightmares still clung to her, dark tendrils of memory, but she wasn't alone. Elena, her unwavering sister, was a constant presence, a silent sentinel by her side, helping her navigate the treacherous path back to herself. One quiet afternoon, standing together by the shimmering expanse of Galveston Bay, they watched the waves roll in. The water, once a symbol of the terror that had almost claimed Maya, now reflected the first tender light of a new dawn. Their bond, forged in the crucible of unimaginable horror, was now unbreakable. The story of the Galveston ghost signal was a dark tapestry woven with betrayal and cruelty, but threaded through it was the vibrant resilience of two sisters and the faint, persistent echo of a drone that refused to be silenced, bringing truth and justice from the depths. The journey ahead was long, but as they stood, side by side, a fragile hope emerged on the horizon. For more true crime stories, like and subscribe to this channel. Thank you.